Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. My name is Garrett Zatlin, and if you were listening to my voice, then yes, Ben is not here this week. But hey, better this week than any of the upcoming weeks that we have, especially with the national meet. So now I know what you're probably thinking. Oh no, I have to listen to only Garrett for the next 45 minutes to an hour. And thankfully, you do not. So excited to bring on today Rangel Hickey. She's our mainly on our women's side of D1 coverage. And then Mike McKean, he's mainly on our men's side of D1 coverage. Two new writers who have been with us since about the beginning of last summer, end of last spring, maybe. Both fantastic people, both really smart, and really excited to get into that with them. Before we do, a few housekeeping items. I'm sure many of you already know where I'm going with this. Ratings and reviews, podcast, Apple. I do think we actually got a couple there on Apple. I think we're up to 109 there, which I was very thrilled about. Up to 190 on Spotify as well. So actually a pretty good overall week. We'll take that. Let me see what a few of the. I'm sorry, 108 on Apple. Excuse me. But something as simple as, hey, love this podcast as well as the Stride Report. Just found the podcast a great listen. So thank you to everyone who's doing that. We really appreciate it. Go leave us a subscription on YouTube as well. You can find a bunch of post-race interviews there, especially for the national meet. That's going to be there as well. Also going to hopefully have a partner this time for the national meet. We'll see. Still figuring that part out. And then what else are we going to be doing? We got national meet previews as well as predictions. For our previews, we offer analysis on every single athlete in relay for the DMR, I should say. In the 800 meters, mile, 3K, 5K DMR for the D1, D2, D3 national meets, we offer analysis for every single entrant in each of those fields, and we release the previews throughout the next week and a half, 2 weeks here. So excited to do that. That's some of our best content. I love doing it. I think it's fascinating. I think it gives you a really strong idea of where the scouting is going to be. But otherwise, go check that out. Go get a subscription. All right, so about to jump in here with Rangel, talk about the women's stuff, and then we'll hop in with Mike. Side note, we recorded the women's portion with Rangel before the ACC championships finished up on Monday. So if we don't talk about any ACC stuff, just know that's why. And then also finally, I'm not sure yet, but I may try to get out a podcast this week, just reacting to the scratches and the entries. Not sure yet. I think we'll definitely have an article. Not sure if I'm going to have an extra podcast, but we will see about that. But in the meantime, enjoy the podcast. All right. I am now joined by first time podcast appearance here from one of TSR's very own. It is Rangel Hickey, one of our newer writers to TSR, but also a very helpful one. Rangel, thank you for joining the show. Any nerves about the first time?
Not too much. I just, we talked about it a little bit before. I wish I had a bit better of a voice right now. I just came back from Lubbock at the Big 12 meet. So I went in a little sick to begin with and then spent the whole week yelling. So we're working with what we got, but it's an honor to be on the show.
Awesome. Well, this is you're a trooper, right? You're in for the love of the game, and we're thrilled to have you. So we'll have you on for the women's side. We're going to have Mike on for the men's side, or at least we're going to try to get him on. Mm-hmm. But you and I, we're just going to chit chat. Conference weekend just happened. There's a handful of women's performances that we wanted to touch on, and what better than talk about an all-time mark from Arkansas's Paityn running 15:11, running away from the field, securing a very big statement win. That mark, 15:11 for 5,000 meters, is NCAA number 7 all time. What did you take away from this performance from Noe? Did this performance change your opinion? Change your opinion of her at all? Did it just validate anything more? Or was this kind of we kind of expected this from her? Is this what you largely expected?
Based on her cross country season, I would say yes. And it also just validated it for me. She did a lot of the back half of that race completely solo. So she demonstrated a lot of composure and strength that I think when she gets to the national meet will serve her really well. So it validated, I think, what we already knew, just in a different way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. How about this? In terms of like the All-American conversation, whether that's top half All-American, bottom half All-American, do you did this performance alter how
Mm,
you view her in that All-American conversation? Do you think she's more closer to that, Lemon Gall, Lexi Holiday Lowry, Olamamwe Bunnage, Cosby tier, or is there still more that she needs to do there? And in terms of her like All-American concrete
mm,
potential there,
mm.
are, where did you, what percent chance did you think she had to be an All-American before this performance? And then what percent chance now do you think she has to be after that performance?
Ooh, I guess I would say maybe 50-50 before. She's an obviously very talented athlete. Just the women's 5K this year is loaded. If everyone races it this year, it's going to be a really fast race. However, to run 15:11 by herself, I think that puts her into the top half All American conversation. Just because I think when she gets in that environment with Olamomwe and Lemon Goal and Halliday Lowry, like she's a competitor. She's going to get up there, get gritty, and I think we could see an even faster mark from her if the race goes that way.
So do you see the race being faster than 15:11 at the national meet?
Gosh, I hope so. I don't know. I don't know if it will be, honestly. Just like we've gotten so used to like the Parker Volby, like aggressive from the gun type racing style. So it's hard to tell yet whether Lemon Goal and Mamwe will really do that in that race. I would love to see it. I would
Yeah.
love to see sub 15 at the national meet because I think there's a lot of women that could run sub 15, and Paityn Noe is one of the ones that I could see possibly taking a crack at that.
That would be pretty wild because if Noe is able to crack 15 at the national meet, I don't think she will, but I do think it's more than possible and even probable that someone at the national meet does, especially when you look at all those aggressive front runners, like you were just saying, the Lemon
Yeah.
Goals, all the Mom ways. I mean, Kosgi is not unafraid to be aggressive from the front. Halliday Lowry is her confidence has
Mm,
boomed since then. So I agree. I think it's possible for Noe. I don't see it happening. But I'm with you. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to put her in that same tier as the Halliday Lowry, Bunnage, Kosgi, Lemengal, Alamawe group,
mhm.
but she's certainly closer to that group than she is the next best group. And it's
Yeah.
certainly very telling of how talented she is. Let's
I
move.
think. Oh, I
Yeah,
was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say. I just think like if Noe were to end up fourth or fifth at the national meet after this, I wouldn't be super surprised by that. But at the same token, she could get ninth in a really, really competitive, aggressive race, and I'd still be like, yeah, that makes sense.
So you would be equally as surprised by Noe placing ninth or placing fifth or sixth.
I would say so, yeah, just because again, like it's a really deep field. She set herself up well enough where I think fourth is a really high ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Like where that would be maybe the result that like surprises me, like, oh wow, that was a fantastic performance for her. But like fifth through ninth, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to say that about someone who's run
15 to
15:11.
11. Yeah.
But that's the day and age that we are in nowadays.
It's the world we're living in.
Yes, it's the world we're living in. Like I remember being like, "Oh, she won the 5K with 15:11 and she's probably not even the top 2 long distance runner in the conference, which is a pretty absurd." Yeah.
No, I mean, considering Momway and Lemon Gold did not race the 5K at SECs, it kind of leaves you wondering, like, oh, what more could we have like had out of that race?
It could have been the sub 15. It could have been the sub 15. So, staying at the SEC meet though, Michaela Rose defeats Sanu Jallow. LSU's Michaela Rose defeats Arkansas's Sanu Jallow. Both women running two flat. Rose on the two flat low side at 202.
Mhm.
Two flat 25. Um, what? Who did you learn more about from this race? Is it Michaela Rose or is it Sanu Jallow?
I think at this point, Michaela Rose. Jallow already ran 159 this season, and we've seen like what she can be at her best. And we're still kind of figuring out what fitness Michaela Rose is in right now, especially since she's indicated that she's not in top form. So to see her run this kind of race, she looked a lot more like herself, in my opinion. Too flat. She was fairly aggressive from the start, and she broke Jallow in the last 200 meters, and that's the Michaela Rose we have come to know. So it's nice to see that she's closer to that form.
Would you put Rose after this performance back into the national title conversation if you didn't have her there already?
I would say, for me, I never want to count her out. Even if she's not in top form, I don't know if I ever took her out of that national title conversation. Really needed to see more. And I think this is like the validation I needed to see to be like, okay, yes, like she could take on Whitaker. Now, Whitaker is in the best shape of her life right now, arguably. But Michaela Rose, I think, has shown a lot more composure this season than she has in the past, especially considering she's not been in that top form that we're used to seeing from her. She's won and competed in races that in the past I don't think she would have responded the same way to some challenges. So
I get so giddy because I hear you give such excellent analysis, and I'm like, she hasn't even been here a year, and she's already saying exactly the things that I would hope she is. So this is it's a really good moment for me as the editor, and I'm very appreciative. I agree. I think there are just ways in which we've seen her compete this season where she can't quite break away from the Wilma Nielsen's or Sophia Gorierin that she wasn't able to at John Thomas Classic, and yet she was still able to get a narrow win. This time she was able to kind of break Jallow in what was still a very quick race, but she was able to kind of break Jallow with 200 meters to go, and Jallow's already going 159. I actually think, if anything, Rose might actually be peaking at the right time. I'm still taking Whitaker. I still like Whitaker as the
I think I'd agree, but
yeah.
I think like what you said though, she is peaking at the right time, and that's just something we're not used to seeing from her. We're just used to seeing 159s all year, and now it's like, maybe like there's a timing to it, and she's timing it well. She's keying it up, and like who knows? I mean, she continues on the trajectory she's on. I see her giving a lot closer race to Whitaker than I would have had before.
So you sound I don't want to say you sound just as high or whatever it may be, but you also sound very high on Rose.
Mm.
If I had to say, like, right now, the national meet is in 2 hours, who are you taking, Rose or Whitaker, right now on the spot? And this could change when you submit your predictions for next week, right?
Yeah.
This could all change. But who do you have right now?
I think I'm with you, and I have to say Whitaker just because, again, I think she's in like really, really good form. I mean, not good, top form,
Right.
and has the experience of competing internationally this past summer at the Olympics. And where if Rose isn't quite in that form, you don't know necessarily what to expect. But again, I think it would be a really, really close race. Like, could come down to just a little fraction of a second there. I
What
hope it
is
does.
real quick before we move on, Jallow, what's her ceiling at the national meet? Like, what's her absolute cap at the ceiling?
I'd say like place or time. It's got to be a sub 2 race. I'd have to think.
Right.
From those top two or three, like if you're gonna win the national meet, you better be running sub 2
Right.
at this point, which is crazy to say. But again, the time we're living in, I'd say her ceiling right now is probably second.
I agree.
I just don't see her beating Whitaker. Like I could see Rose beating Whitaker on a really good day. I don't know if I can say the same for Jallow yet.
I agree. I think Jallow is climbing up there among the best. But you're asking her to beat Rose and Whitaker on the same day in a
Yeah.
championship race. That is a lot to ask of anyone. I agree. I think her ceiling's about second place.
Yeah.
Let's move off of that for now. We might come back to SEC if we have time, but let's go to the Big East. Let's go to the Big East. Alex Millard of Providence takes home a minor upset win with a time of 8:50 over 3,000 meters. She now sits at NCAA number 16 on the national leaderboard. Right behind her in that very same race was Georgetown's Chloe Scrimgeour, also running 8:50. Scrimgeour now, at the time of recording this, sits at NCAA number 17 on the national leaderboard. Behind them was Kimberly May of Providence, who ran 8:54. Lucy Jenks, I believe, was fourth place in 8:56.
Yeah.
let's put it this way. So as you look at the national leaderboard on TFers, right, and you go to the
Mm,
3,000 meters, um, this is a race that very rarely anyone scratches because it's the
right.
final distance race at the national meet, right? There's not really much of incentive for anyone to ever scratch out of this race. What who is the most likely name, however, to scratch out of this event,
Ooh.
if any, which
I
is
gotta pull up
very
my list
yeah,
really
that's
quick.
okay. That's okay. Because and I did kind of put you on the spot here,
A little
but
bit. That's okay. I'll forgive
which
you.
yeah, well, I'm glad someone forgives me nowadays for Ben's always you put me on the spot. That's not true. Ben's always actually really nice. But in terms of all of the women that we see here, of the names that you're looking down, like, okay, they could run this double, maybe they could do this triple. Is there anyone who you could even fathom seeing or like even having like a good enough reason for saying, oh, I just think they're going to scratch it, if at all?
I yield as maybe just because of her obviously the NCAA record setting mile. I
Mhm.
don't think they'll use her for the DMR. Oregon has so many pieces. I don't think they'll need her. However, that I could also see them putting her on that DMR anchor possibly to like just
Yeah.
really lock down their title winning contention and all that. So possibly, but at the same time, like that's also the end of her weekend. So, like you said, why not run it?
Right.
Um, Honestly, no, because I would have thought originally coming into the season, I would have said someone like Kayla McCabe would run the mile instead of the 3K, but now she's not in the qualification for the
Yeah.
mile. And she focused on the 3K at Big 12s. And so, yeah, she's going to go all in on the 3K. Um, a lot of names like Amy Bunnage and Lemon are going to double back from the 5K because why not? So, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess most likely I'd say I but
I don't hate the Aieldes. I do think Oregon's going to want the team points if they can get it from
yeah,
her. I would think like someone like if I could even think about it, like Amy Bunnage or Sophia Kennedy. Like I know Bunnage has had some maybe minor injury challenges in the past. She's still pretty young. Like, do you want to put that much racing, that much high intensity racing under her legs? But like same thing with Noe, who's
yeah,
at the 15th on the national leaderboard. But I'm with you. It seems unlikely, and it seems like you'd be asking a lot for even just one of these women to scratch. God forbid an injury happens or anything along those lines. Um,
yeah.
but I'm with you there. In terms though of Millard and Scrimgeour themselves, what is more impressive from them? Was it that pair of 850 marks, or was it Millard's 1522 mark and Scrimgeour's 1522 mark? Which of those performances did you find more impressive, and which do you think they have
Ooh,
a better chance of being All Americans in?
that's a narrow comparison since they've
It is.
practically run the same time in both events. Um, to answer the first half of the question, I would say I'm almost more impressed by Millard running 15:22. I
Hmm.
guess in my mind, I see her more as a miler 3K
Hmm.
runner compared to Scrimgeour, who's a lot more aerobic centric in the 3K, 5K, and cross country.
Yep.
So I'm not as surprised to see Scrimgeour run 15:22, especially after her cross country success. Where Millard, maybe I'm a little more surprised to see that time, but 850 from both of them is just phenomenal. And I think it's crazy. We're saying 850 is going to be the cutoff for like 850.32 is going to make the national meet, but
Yeah.
850.46 might not.
It's just absurd. It's absurd.
And
So
it was like, you guys have probably going to be wrong on a lot of your over unders from earlier this year.
Well, thankfully, I think I chose more unders than Ben, so I'll be less wrong. Is effectively the measuring stick. I
There
actually
you
don't know
go.
if that's true. I don't even know. I don't even know how many unders I took compared to him. So I don't know if I missed this. So which event do you think is their best in the All American position? It sounds like Millard, you would say the 3K, but Scrimgeour, you take five.
Yeah, I think I'd stick with that. I know they're both ranked a little bit higher in the 5K, but in my mind, I don't know why. I just definitely see Millard more as that 3K strength. like the 3K fits her strengths better than the 5K. And whereas for Scrimgeour, that 5K, especially if it's like a fast from the gun race, I think she's very good at hanging onto a pace and just sticking herself in it. Now I think her ceiling is still maybe 8th, but
Yeah, and I think you're not far off. How about this? One last question before we move off of this event. Millard, is there a chance she scratches the 5K to be fresh for the 3K while everyone else is doubling?
there's a chance. Is Providence's DMR in right now?
They are I think they are
I
technically
think
in.
I think so. So assuming they need her on the DMR as well, I could see her doing DMR 3K and
They do
scratching the
not.
5K.
I will say she does not. She is not listed as one of the names who did run the DMR for their qualifying
Okay.
time. So now she could run. She could still run it. Make no mistake.
Right.
I still think she does the 5K 3K double, but it would not surprise me if she ended up doing just the 3K or the DMR 3K.
Right.
In theory, an easier double, but
Right.
Okay, let's move off of that. Going to Big Tens. Chloe Foerster takes a very minor win, outleans Hayley Kitching over 800 meters to win the Big Ten title, 203.27 to 203.29. Ella Nelson of Oregon also running 203 for third place.
Yeah.
Foerster, it feels like she's kind of at this like new refined veteran level. It seems like she's a little bit more sure of herself this season. Seems like she's peaking more on time. Seems like she's just sharper. Seems like she just is racing with more of like a veteran poise. Meanwhile, Kitching, she ran 205 in her last outing. Not a great performance. A 203 narrow loss to Foerster's nothing to be ashamed of, but it doesn't seem like Kitching's like quite at the top of her game right now. Can you just give me a little bit of analysis on both what you see for Foerster lately and from Kitching lately?
Yeah. Well, I was surprised by this result because Chloe Foerster versus like Hayley Kitching on the national list, for instance, Hayley Kitching's at number 8 in the 800 list. And Chloe Foerster, I believe this race put her at 30th. And yet her strengths lie a lot more in the mile. She's number 9 in the mile right now at 4:26. I was a little surprised that she didn't run the mile at Big Tens, to be honest, and like went head to head with that Oregon duo of Nielsen and Barnett. But I would say if you had told me that would be the result, I would have thought you were joking because I'm like, no, Hayley Kitching is going to be the Big Ten champion. Like, what do you mean? Just because Hayley Kitching on paper is by far the best 800 runner in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then to get beat out basically by a miler, that leaves me with a little bit more questions, I guess, for Kitching ahead of the national meet.
Yeah, I'm with you. If it was just like, okay, look, it's a tight championship race. You know, Foerster's like a no joke name. Like she's very legit. Mm-hmm. She can drop down effectively. I'm with you. She's still more of a miler. There's nothing necessarily per se terrible or wrong about that narrow runner-up finish. But to come off of that 205 mark, and you are very clearly, like you said, the best 800-meter runner in the Big Ten, you kind of hope for a bit more. So I'm with you there in that sense. Foerster right now, is she more than 70% chance or less than 70% chance to be an All-American in the mile right now?
It's so hard to say just because it really depends on how the scratches go, first of all. Like, who scratches out of this mile? Because who's going to scratch out of the mile when they've run 4:26? If I'd run 4:26, I'd be thinking, yeah, I'm going to be an All-American. What do you mean I'm not?
You'd be thinking that you're going pro. I mean, I'm just...
but so, like, a lot of it depends on the seeding of those prelims, too, because, like, I could see one heat just being absolutely loaded, and we're going to see a lot of really good women being left out of that final. And Chloe Foerster, I think, historically has been left out of the finals at the NCAA meet. So if she can get in, I'd say she's a bottom half All-American. But a lot of it comes down to, like, how well is she going to race through these rounds? And she raced through rounds at Big Tens in an event that's arguably not her main event. So that shows some promise. But I don't know.
So I'm not letting you off the hook here. Is it over
Oh
70%
goodness.
or is it under 70%?
I'd say it's under for getting like chances of her being an All-American. Correct. Say
Yes,
it's
chances of
under
her. Yes, under.
under
Okay.
70%,
Is
which
it
is
is it
crazy.
is it under 60%?
I almost want to say like 55%.
I don't disagree. Like I do think her chances of being an All-American are better than not. But you're right. She has had struggles in the postseason before, specifically in the rounds.
Right.
You have to wonder like how many of these women are going to scratch. And I do like her chances a bit more. I'd say she is closer to that 65-70% chance. I
Yeah.
do think she has a good shot, but I like in this year's mile field, as you've alluded to multiple times, it's a little tricky to figure out here.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Big 12s where you can tell us actually a little bit because you saw this in person. So in the
Yes.
prelims, Oklahoma State's Kaylee Politza actually ran the fastest 800-meter time of the entire meet with a converted 2:01. That time now puts her
Mhm.
at NCAA number 16 on the national leaderboard. She is the final automatic qualifier in. Chances are we'll get one, two, maybe three scratches, so she's probably pretty safe. But in the finals, it was Texas Tech's Fanny Arendt, so close. I
We'll go
got that
with
right.
it. Yeah.
Oh, I nailed that. Yes. Um, it was her taking home the win over Iowa State's Michaela Clark. Aaron's getting converted 201.99 from altitude. Um, what what were your thoughts? So you saw this. Walk us through that race.
Did.
Walk us through what you kind of observed about Arendt and how her racing and how her approach could potentially be translated to, if at all, the national meet.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think outside of the 4x4s, that was the loudest that facility got all day. Just because, you were at Tech for the meet. And Fanny, I'm not even going to attempt her last name. I'll stick with Fanny. Um, it's not like that hard to pronounce. I just don't
Of
know.
course.
So
No, that's fair.
um, she was not supposed to win that race, like on paper. I think she had run 203 to a 4, I think, earlier this season. I was looking all this up when I was talking to my teammates. I was like, where did she come from? Uh, she just had the race for her life, is what that was. And you could tell on her face when she crossed the line, she could not believe what just happened. And neither could Michaela Clark for that matter. What I think was more interesting was Politza's strategy in the prelim, running that hard to get to the final. And then she ended up fourth in that final and faded a little bit. And I think she ran like 204. I am curious what the plan was for that. Like if she was just trying to get a national mark and like secure it in the prelim and not have to worry about it in the final. But she went hard from the gun in that final. Her and Clark came through in like 58 and change. And Fanny just ran a very, very patient race and just slowly caught up. And the last 200, like best last 200 of the whole meet, maybe outside of our men's 4x4, but I'm biased. Um, but I would say if she makes the national meet, it would take another race of her life to get beyond that first round.
Interesting. Okay. And I kind of agree with you. I will say she did run 203 at the Valentine invite back in mid
Yeah.
February, but before that she had run 204, but before that she had run 205. The craziest part in all this is that it hasn't even been, we're recording this March 2nd. Arendt had run 221 over 800 meters back in early February. So
Yeah.
this is a little bit all over the place. Now, granted, I'm like, she's run under 210 before.
Mm-hmm.
She's run quick times, but this is certainly an unexpected rise from her,
Yeah.
no doubt. So
I
I don't
mean,
doubt you there.
if she continues to, like, if she makes it a national meet, best progression on paper, I would say, of like almost anyone in the NCAA to go from running 206, 205 at the start of your season to 201 and making the national meet. Peaking when it matters is what that is. So I would be really curious to see if she does, assuming someone scratches, at least assuming Nielsen scratches in favor of the mile or something like that, and she gets in. I would say I'd be really interested to see how she does at the national meet, just to see if she peaked for the Big 12 meet or peaked for
Right.
the national meet. There's a big difference.
Right now, because obviously you work a lot with our rankings, there's a lot on the women's side as well. I just resent you our rankings list that we have right now via Slack.
Yes.
When you look at any and all the names that we've worked on beforehand, what are like is there anyone who's in the running for breakout woman of the year on the distance side? Is it other than Arendt?
Breakout women in the distance side. There could be an argument. I would be in favor of an argument for Wilma. Again, I'm a little bit biased. I've known Wilma for years because we raced all the time when she was at Bradley. But like, I don't, if you had told me going into the season, like she was going to run 425 twice,
Right.
And win Big Tens, I don't think I would have said that. And I mean, she wasn't even on our rankings at the start of the season, and now she's fourth.
Right.
So I would say maybe that would be my argument, although I would put Orange right in that conversation.
Good to know. All right. Well, hey, one last one here. I always try to get these end of season award votes out of people a little bit early if I can.
I see that.
Yeah.
Putting out feelers.
Yeah. Listen, however I can begin to sway the vote in whatever direction I want it in, I'm gonna do it. So, because I'm selfish. But
I'll vote any way you want for a pay raise.
Good answer. Good answer. That's correct. See, this is why we brought her onto the podcast. She's very smart. So, final note here. Florida's Tia Wilson running 4:30. I would say an upset, maybe a minor upset, but an upset over Lorena Rangel Batres of LSU, who also ran 4:30. Rangel Batres having run 4:26 in the mile earlier this season. Tia Wilson, an accomplished runner, newcomer from the UK. We knew she was talented, but 4:30 to beat that. One, just initial reactions to that win and that performance from Wilson and maybe the ensuing implications for Rangel Batres. And then two, right now, Wilson sits at NCAA number 21 in the women's mile. She needs 5 scratches. Upon a quick glance, do you think she gets those scratches?
I knew you were about to ask that. I'd be surprised if we see 5 scratches in this field. Again, I'm going to go back to like, if I'm running 427, 428, and I'm sitting at 428 is number 16 right now. I'd run 428. I'd be like convinced I'm going to be an All-American. So why would I scratch, especially in a weekend. I know conference meet weekend for women was very tactical, I'd say, across the board. I think the fastest mile we saw on the weekend was 4:31 from Chamberlain at Big 12s. I could be wrong. 4:30. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So, no, she's not going to get the 5 scratches, I don't think. But I would say that gut reaction, I was surprised by that. On paper, I would have picked Rangel Batres, but based on that field too, I guess I'm not surprised at the same time because her teammate Morley was not in that field.
Right.
There's a couple like big names. Actually, there's not a lot of SEC women ranked in this mile right now, which is surprising. It was just a very tactical race to run 4:30. That was a strong sit and kick race. So I'm not as worried for like Rangel Batres maybe as you might be just like off the rip if you're looking at that on paper. Just because I think she thrives more in a like time trial-esque environment where it's like fast from the gun. And Tia Wilson proved like she's a very smart tactical racer and has a great kick. So if she does make it in the national meet, I'd be so interested to see how she navigates the rounds.
Isn't it crazy that we're talking about 4:30 milers as a tactical affair in a championship race? I wonder this. Do you think that the national meet tactics and approach in the prelims would favor Rangel Batres maybe even more than what she just saw at SECs?
It was hard to say. I'm looking at the list, and if I'm someone like Aielda is, why would I not make this race honest from the gun? I mean, prelims are one thing. You got to run the rounds, right? We get to the final. I mean, what's stopping someone who's run 4:23 from running the kick out of everybody else? Unless Oregon just wants to run a little bit of play some games and see if Nielsen and Aieldas have enough of a kick to outkick everybody else, but I just don't see that. I think if I was someone like Aieldas, I'd want to make it an honest race and just see who keeps up. Because then some of those 426 girls won't.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's fair. Well, and a lot of that, those 426 girls, like you look at, you know, even 428 miler, Vera Sojberg, or, Alex Carlson, 427 converted,
Mm-hmm.
or Ethan Morley, or Lorena Rangel Batres. Like a lot of those women had never run 426 before or anything close to that. So a lot of it's like, let's see how legit you are if you continue to hit the gas, gas, gas,
Yeah.
if you're someone like, Aielda. So I think that's a fair
Yeah.
point.
I would say
Um,
for someone like Rangel Batres with a 426 PR running 430 in a tactical race is very, very promising because that's only, I think, it's within 3 or 4 seconds of her PR, depending on like the points, hundredths. But to run 430 in a tactical race, that I would be shocked if that doesn't make the national meet final.
Interesting. Interesting. I guess we'll see. I guess you're right. It is hard to imagine that that would happen, but um, I suppose we'll see. I suppose we'll see.
Yeah, we will.
Um, well, Rachel, thank you so much. We went a little bit over. We couldn't get to everything today, but I appreciate your time. You were an absolute pro. Well done. So thank you. Yeah, appreciate your time and for coming on, and looking forward to your predictions coming up.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking at it right now. I don't know who I'm going to pick. So you guys might be just as surprised as I am when the time comes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Yeah, been a lot of fun. Thanks.
All right, I am now joined by none other than TSR's men's D1 specialist. It is Mike McKean, who has also worked on the women's side as well. But just like Rachel, another first time podcast, I guess, inductee. Mike, how are we feeling after conference weekend, man?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. It was an exciting weekend. And, like you mentioned, this is my first appearance on a podcast. So, what better way to make my introduction than the Blue Oval podcast? So,
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about track.
Yeah, man. So no other podcast before. This is the first one.
This is the first one. Yeah. And, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Perfect. Good answer. That's the correct answer.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we're gonna chat about a handful of performances today. We got a few really good middle distance results that we got to cover, specifically over 800 meters. And first, we're going to talk about Cal Poly's Aidan McCarthy. He runs a 1:45.19 at the Boston U last chance meet. That's NCAA number 3 all time, a spot that was previously occupied by Georgetown's Tinoda Matsatsa. We've seen McCarthy have a great season so far. He's run 146 over 800 meters, 219 for 1,000 meters, and 352 in the mile. This result, however, feels a little different. This result feels like it's him taking a step up. It's an elevation. Where do you now see him as in the overall national picture as we prepare for the national meet? Are you willing to call him a national title contender? Do you think he can beat Matsatsa? Like, what is his ceiling? What's the realistic expectation for him as we approach the national meet now that he has an all-time mark under his legs?
Yeah. I mean, this was shocking to see. He's had a great season and he's seemingly getting better each week. So, felt like we knew something like this was coming in the 800, but I did not see 145 low. This completely rearranges my view on where to put him nationally. I certainly think Matsatsa has a viable competitor in the national title picture now. Um, yeah, just wildly impressed with him. And, I feel like there was a gap between Matsatsa before
Mm-hmm.
this, and he just closed that. And yeah, I wouldn't call him the favorite. I still think that is Matsatsa, but man, I like him as a number 2, or even getting one of those top 3 spots.
Yeah, how about this now? I'll reframe this question now. Is there is McCarthy the only guy who can realistically take down Matsatsa at the national meet?
There are a couple other guys I still like. I do like Hassan. I think he's been incredible this season so far. I'm really high on Dan Waukee from
Yeah.
Villanova. Um, just seeing how he competed against Matsatsa this past weekend, that kind of opened my eyes a little bit. I know he's young, little inexperienced on the national stage, but that was impressive. But in terms of, the biggest contenders to Matsatsa, I'd say I'd like McCarthy the most, and he would be my pick to upset Matsatsa.
And that's where I'm kind of leaning. I agree with you. I
Mhm.
don't think McCarthy is a national title favorite in the same way that Matsatsa is. I'd still
Mhm.
take Matsatsa as I think the consensus favorite, or at least just as a consensus among TSR. But I do
Mhm.
think that if anyone's going to be able to beat him, I agree. I also really like Waukee a lot, and I also really like McCarthy. I think McCarthy's experienced. He's tactically sound. He's run exceptional times. He keeps getting better and better. There's momentum on his side. There's just a lot of
Mhm.
great stuff about McCarthy in this performance. But I agree with you. I don't know if I'd say that he's my pick to win the national title right now. Could that change? I'm sure it'll change in the coming week or so when we make our picks. But I completely agree with you there. I wanted
Mhm.
to move off of him though. Tinoda Matsatsa, like you had just mentioned, and we just mentioned here, ran 146 low at the Big East Championships to win the 800-meter title, defeating Dan Waukee. This was something that I had posed to Ben. I had told Ben, hey, listen, I think he can be an All-American lock, Waukee that is, if he's able to at least keep things close and competitive with Matsatsa. What is your opinion of Waukee? Do you see him as an All-American contender, a favorite? Is he a lock in your eyes for the All-American honors? And how, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most concerned, how concerned are you by his lack of experience in his youth?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. You know, to be honest, after this weekend, I feel like he's an All-American lock.
Yeah.
Um, just seeing the way he was able to navigate the rounds. I mean, granted, it's Big East. It'll be different on the national stage, but just seeing how he was able to navigate that and really compete with Matsatsa completely changed my view on him. Um, as far as the inexperience goes, it is a bit worrisome. He's young and not sure how he's going to perform on the national stage, but all things considered, he's incredibly talented. He's got strength. I mean, we've seen it
Yep.
in his 217 1K. And, you know, I think before this weekend, I was more worried about his inexperience. But after this weekend, like I said, he feels like a lock to me. And I'm really liking the way he's looking.
In terms of what his ceiling is at the national meet, like how highly do you think he can place? Like, what's his realistic? Like, is it
Hmm.
first, second, third, fourth, fifth? What is it?
Ceiling, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to get silver or
Yep.
bronze.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think I'm that
Mhm.
high on Waukee. I think he's shown that he can legitimately compete with the best middle distance runners in the country. And like Ben and I were saying on a podcast earlier, like I don't love this 800-meter field. I don't think it's
Mhm.
exceptionally great. Seems like you agree with me here, and Ben too. Frankly, it's good. It's got like McCarthy and it's got Matsatsa, and I think Waukee has kind of entered that kind of upper echelon.
Mhm.
I don't know if I personally, I think, some people would put Hassan in that top tier, and I don't disagree. But I also don't love Hassan that much after losing to Whitmarsh in the 800-meter finals at SECs. So
Mhm.
it's a little tricky, but I agree with you. I think Waukee's ceiling is probably that of a silver medalist at the national meet. Staying on the 800-meter side, Big Tens, really interesting races here from Oregon men.
Mhm.
Kidali and Matthew Erickson run 146 in the prelims. That should be enough to get them into the national meet. It should. Knock on wood. Let me just double check here. I want to make sure I actually have this correct. Yes, Erickson
Mhm.
currently sits at NCAA number 16, Kidali at NCAA number 15. Those two should be the last two men into the last meet, into the national meet, excuse me. And then those
Mhm.
two men, and then of course, go to the finals of the Big Ten championships. They win. It's Erickson taking the win over Kidali, who was second. Is there a back end seed like Kidali and Erickson that you feel more confident about on the national stage than those two guys in the distance events. So I would say go to Tifers, take a look at that national leaderboard, right? So you got guys
Mm-hmm.
like in the back end, like Harvey Cram and Foster Malik, and maybe Ruben Reina gets in after a scratch, right? Or other guys in the
Mm-hmm.
3K like Brian Massoud and George Cootie or Matt Strangio, right? Or in the 5K, maybe that's Snell Masando or Joey Noakes and Drew Bosley. Are
Mm-hmm.
there any of those back end seeds that you feel more comfortable about being an All American than Erickson and Kidali?
You know, I do really like what Erickson and Kidali showed us this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, as far as like the mile goes, I feel a little more confident in someone like Ruben Reina. I know
Yep.
he's sitting at 17 right now in the mile, and he was impressive this past weekend again. And I feel like I like his upside a bit more when it comes to those mile races. But um, I mean, I will say that was impressive of the Oregon duo to do that. And they bumped some big names
Yep.
off that national list, which, I mean, they bumped up the defending indoor national champion. So, I mean, there's something to be said about that.
There is, and in fact, I think that's kind of an interesting point. And we can, the men's 800 at the SEC meet was heavily impacted by the Big Ten. Sam
Mm-hmm.
Whitmarsh gets the win. Sam Whitmarsh has not been having a great season, but he runs 147, gets the win over Hassan. Rivaldo Marshall doesn't even make, or is it Marshall or Tyrese Taylor? I want to say it was Taylor does not even make the finals. Rivaldo Marshall does. He still can't
Mm-hmm.
run fast enough. And it looks like right now in the men's 800 meters, if I'm looking at this correctly, Tyrese Taylor sits at NCAA number 17, tied with Tyler Matthews. They need one scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to be honest, I think the only scratch I could potentially see is Colin Salmon. And even then, I think he scratches. I think he may not scratch. So,
Yeah.
in your opinion, when you're looking at this 800-meter list, who is the guy that most likely scratches to get Tyrese Taylor? And I don't know, maybe it's Tyler Matthews. I assume they both get in. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the guy that most likely scratches, and do you think that guy scratches?
I'm with you. I think it's Salmon, but man, if I'm him, I'm running the 800.
So am I. Yes.
Yeah. I I just really like his shot in the 800. I mean, it goes to what we were talking about earlier. We don't love this 800 field,
Mm-hmm.
and man, I just feel like in terms of best shot at finishing top three or even becoming a national champion, I think that's the 800 for Salmon. So he's the one that's most likely to pull out or scratch from the 800, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Taylor and Tyler Matthews from BYU are going to be left off.
I can't believe you're saying that. I think here's the thing. I think he should run the 800 personally. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what he should run. I don't know if that's what he will run, and that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that Tyler Matthews and Tyrese Taylor get in, but you're right. The defending national champion Rivaldo Marshall probably not going to get in. Right? Nick
Right.
Plant just won the ACC title over Patrick Toohey. Probably not going to get in, right? You take a look at
Yeah.
Mehdi Yanori and Emmanuel Gardino and Sam Austin, and there's a lot of guys here who you think would get in, and they're just not. Like TJ Robinson had one of the best races of his career, running 146 converted, and he's only at NCAA number 19 on that list. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of tricky ones there. I want to go back to the Big Ten though. Erickson and Kidali. Right now, which of those men do you like more as an All-American threat? And what percent chance would you give either of those men to be All-Americans? Because I really like Erickson. I think actually I might even pick Erickson to be an All-American. I think he's hitting his peak at the right time. I think he's tactically savvy. He's highly experienced. I think he's run multiple instances to validate his recent fitness. I really like Erickson personally. Who is it for you though? That do you see either of those men being All Americans? And then, if so, what percent chance do you think they could be All Americans?
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Erickson a bit more. I mean, we know what Kidali's run. We know how talented he is. No, he's still adjusting to the NCAA. He's coming on strong, performing better as the season goes on. But I'm with you. The experience factor for Erickson is what gives him the edge for me. Um, he's riding a wave of momentum right now, and he's looked great in his past few races. So I do like Erickson a bit more. In terms of All American, man, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but we just don't love this 800
Yeah.
field, and
Yeah.
I like an experienced guy who's racing well, riding a wave of momentum to finish as an All American. In terms of percentage, I'd like to say I'd give him a 50-50 shot, maybe even higher,
Yep.
honestly.
Yep. I'm with you there. I'm with you there. Um, I want to stay on the 800 meters Big 12. Lloyd Frilot of TCU wins the Big 12 title and takes down a very good field. Tyler Matthews, Darius Kipiego, Dayton Carlson. Frilot had run 146 early in the season. It was a pretty substantial breakout race.
Mhm.
Now he has a marquee win. Like, this is a significant win on his resume. What does this result for you change when, as you prepare to make your All-American predictions? What does this change for you? Like, what did this race tell you about him that maybe you didn't already know or that you wanted to know about him previously?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here was how would he respond against top tier competition?
Right.
I know, we've seen it from him, but there wasn't, this was a race that validated his 146. And, you know, I kind of needed to see something to back that up. You know, beating a field like that, Kipiego, Tyler Matthews, Dayton Carlson, that was a impressive win and completely changes my view on him. To beat a field that elite, I mean, you got to be looking at him as a favorite, as an All American favorite.
So you see him as an All-American favorite. That was my next question. You do?
Yeah,
Is right
absolutely.
now, gun to your head, if I had to be like, hey, predictions are due in an hour, right? And they're not.
Mhm.
They're next week. So, but but if I had to say right now, are you taking him as an All-American? You writing him down? Are you writing him down in your All-American picks?
I'm writing him down. Yeah.
I, I'm I'm I want to say I'm not, but I don't have an I'm kind of with you. I don't really have an argument against him. Like,
Hmm.
I needed to see more after that 146, and I don't think there
Hmm.
was much of a way he could have validated himself any better than what this win just signals to us. And so
Yeah.
I'm with you. I feel like I still need to see more personally, and yet I don't know what more he could have really realistically done to have bolstered his resume at the right time in the postseason against better competition. I thought that was an exceptional
Hmm.
win. Um, I want to go to the ACC now, 3K. Gary Martin runs 7:36, more or less matches his PR, maybe slightly off of that by less than a
Hmm.
second. Luke Tewald matches his PR as well for second place. Did we did we learn anything about either of these guys, or is this just a hey, it was a fast championship race and that's that?
You know, it- I feel like it validates Gary Martin, right? I mean, he's a superstar in the
Right.
NCAA, so he's been incredible. I mean, after seeing who started that race, who's on the starting line, I figured Martin would handily win.
Right.
Now, Luke Tewalt, that was impressive to match his PR. He's been great in the 3K this season.
Hmm.
So I've got some more validation with him, but man, I almost feel a little more confused about what Martin does
Well,
at
that was my
nationals.
next question. So it's he can run the 3K, the five. I'm sorry, he can run the mile, the 3K, or the DMR, right? The realistic. He can technically do all three. It's possible. It's extremely challenging, but it's possible. Um,
Hmm.
what does he do? Does he do just all in 3K? Does he do DMR 3K? Does he do mile 3K? Does he do mile DMR 3K double? Does he just, for some reason, just do mile DMR? What is the move for him at nationals if you had to predict what he would do?
if I had to predict, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I'm thinking a 3:48 miler is going to scratch from the mile
Yes.
and go DMR 3K.
I think you're right. I think you're right. That's
I
just
just,
good.
yeah, I mean, I, as far as the DMR goes, like, there's no other anchor leg that I'm going to have more confidence in. I know, we look at a guy like Harrison Witt from Princeton, who's another guy I have confidence in on the anchor, but, Ethan Strand's not running the DMR.
No.
Nathan Green's probably not running the DMR. So I just, I really like his chances at winning 2 national championships in the DMR and 3K.
How surprised would you be if Ethan Strand, like what percent surprised, or like 1 out of 10, right? 10 being most surprised, if Ethan Strand ended up scratching the mile and did the DMR 3K?
Probably 10.
Well, 10, like you literally would be completely floored.
I would. I think, man, I don't know. I just think the mile 3Ks going to be what he chooses. I think, what I think is going to happen is they'll have Parker Wolf on the anchor for the DMR just because he hasn't raced a 5K this indoor
That's
season.
right. Yeah, he hasn't.
He has the 7:33K. It was nice to see him back racing again this past weekend on the DMR. So, I like a guy like Parker Wolf on the anchor. He's got a great kick, great turnover. And yeah, I can just see Strand doing the mile 3K.
That's a great point. Because you're right. Because what else does Wolf have to run that first day?
Mm-hmm.
100% agree. What else does he have to run? He's not going to run the 5K because he's not qualified. So
Mm-hmm.
run the 5K, 3K, run the DMR 3K double. Isn't that
Yeah.
wild? That, like, what if I told you at the beginning of the season and I said, hey, Parker Wolf will compete at the national meet this year, but he's not going to be qualified in the 5K. If I had told you that at the beginning of the season, what would you have said?
I'd be shocked. Graham Blanks goes pro. It's like, oh, like indoor 5Ks easily Parker Wolf's.
Right.
There's no one else is going to win. And now he doesn't have a time in the 5K. He's not running it at nationals. And yeah, it just opens things up in the 5K now. But yeah, I certainly want to believe you that he'd run 7:30 and he'd be in the 3K DMR double.
Who is your 5K national title favorite right now? Because Blanks is out, right? Blanks is pro. Wolf's
Yeah.
not running it. And right now, the top 5 seeds behind Blanks are Hatem Samuel, Yassine Abdallah, Liam Murphy, Brian Massau, and Patrick Kiprop. Who do you like of that group? I think I know where you're going to answer this, by the way.
I like Liam Murphy.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Yassine. I thought you were going to say Abdallah.
I feel like, I would have said Abdallah. I mean, not that his 3K performance was bad this past weekend, but I would have liked to maybe see him get the win there. I know. I mean, he's a sub 13:10 guy in the 5K this winter, but Hatem Samuel's been pretty impressive and has improved on a lot of weaknesses this indoor season. I like what he has done this winter, but especially if it's a slow race, I don't know. I like Liam Murphy.
I don't disagree. I think I kind of lean towards you. I think there's a tactical aspect that, guys like Samuel and Massau from a speed and turnover perspective don't necessarily have yet. Same thing with Patrick Kiprop. I'm not incredibly, like, I don't want to say I'm not high on Abdallah because I am, but I still don't know if he's ready to win a national title. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
more or less an All-American lock in this field, but I don't know how much of these guys I like tactically other than Liam Murphy. Maybe it's Rocky Hansen, but there's just a handful of names here who I think I would prefer over them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk about a few quick upsets, and then we'll get out of here.
Cool.
I guess we could talk about Brian Massal, 740 converted 3K. I don't really know if we need to talk about that, but let's talk about a few upsets. Daelen Ackley here of Notre Dame upsets, gets early separation on the field, wins the ACC mile title in 4:02, a very tactical 4:02, or at least a unique, I should say, 4:02. Takes down Steven Jackson. A, what does this do for your prospects of analyzing Ackley at the for the spring months? And then B, what does this result tell you about Jackson, if anything, for the upcoming national meet?
Yeah, definitely. That was a great win from Daelen Ackley. I feel like he's a guy that I thought would run faster this indoor season in the mile, but it bodes well for his spring season. You know, it's not top 16 times for outdoor,
Right.
so I like his odds going through regionals, going through the rounds. A lot of these races are really tactical, and what he showed me was impressive. I mean, he's above where I thought he was tactically, and yeah, I just like his upside going into the spring months. As far as Jackson goes, definitely would have liked to see him get the win. I know he's a 352 guy, seen what he can do in a quick race. I'm a little lower on him now after not winning the mile. But that being said, second place in a 403 race, 402 race is nothing to hang your hat on.
No, and I'm with you though. Like I really felt like this was a different season for Jackson. Felt like Jackson had taken the step up. He had just improved all around. Just thought he was just flat out better miler. And then he does this where I'm like I'm not taking him out of my All-American conversation entirely, but it makes it really hard to now be like, oh, I've got a sneaky little back end pick here for an All-American spot for Jackson. And now I don't feel as ambitious about doing that after this kind of result, especially when the prelims at the national meet are going to be so tactical as almost they certainly usually are. Now, do I like that he has the experience? Yes. Admittedly, he basically got steamrolled at NCAA's last year. But I do think he's a different version of himself. I think he's a better version of himself. I think he has a better shot. But yeah, that race was a little interesting, and I think he's going to have even more challenges ahead. I'm still not taking him out of the All-American conversation. Drew Rogers of Missouri, though, we had briefly just spoken about this, takes the upset win over Ruben Reyna and Yassine Abdallah with an absurd kick. I don't know if you saw that kick, but with an absurd kick. Just general thoughts. I don't even know if there's like a main takeaway to have here, but just general thoughts.
Yeah, that was such a cool result. I just feel like I really like those guys from Mizzou. They're super young and fun, and they have a very bright future. So, man, that was just honestly, it was just really cool to see. And my only takeaway is that I'm excited to see what Missouri does in the fall.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rogers is going to be like those are the performances, the marquee performances where I can go back on and say, and this was the moment where Rogers really turned the corner and became a true stud. And I think like these are the defining moments that happened, that has for, and to defeat Reyna, to defeat Abdallah, even if those guys were doubling back. I mean, Abdallah doubling back from the DMR and that's it. To win that race in the style that he did with that kick, if his fitness can just elevate to a point where he's just qualifying for the national meet, he would probably be one of the more dangerous runners in the NCAA. So I agree. I thought that was exceptionally quick. And on that note, I'm going to cut it there. Mike, you did an excellent job. Well done. I can tell you studied. Of course, Mike, for those who are listening, I've never seen a writer come in and adopt our writing style, our methodology, our ranking style better than Mike has. So we're extremely thrilled to have him, especially for the upcoming championships and the spring season. But Mike, kudos on your Blue Hole podcast debut. Nice job, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. And, like I told you when I first started, this is just so much fun. Enjoyed writing about it, talking about it. So, appreciate you giving me the platform.
Of course, man. More on the way. Thanks again, Mike.
All right. See ya.
All right, that is all we have for this week. Thank you for tuning in and listening. We are hoping to have Ben back next week for national meet previews, national title contenders, and favorites, and wild cards, and sleepers. It's going to be a great, pre-national meet preview. We are very, very excited about that as always. And of course, as always, leave us a rating and review. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, subscribe. You know the whole deal. Thank you to Rangel and Mike for joining us on today's podcast. I'll see you guys later. Bye.